probably the coolest story out of this whole thing, and I don't think I've shared it with too many people. I don't share it a lot of times because I can't share it without crying. But so my parents moved to Pensacola, Florida, in 1977, and I was born in '78, and they had me dedicated at birth at this church that they were going to. And he said when they took me down to the altar to have me dedicated, I was just like throwing a big fit and screaming and crying. And the pastor, made the comment to my family of just how strong my lungs were because I was carrying on. And told my dad that he said, this child will be a voice for his generation. And my dad was like, I couldn't tell you that for 33 years because I never wanted to put pressure on you. He goes, but I knew when you started singing Christian music and I saw the effect that those songs were having on people, that was kind of like this thing. And I was like, wow. So I was kind of like, how do you do that? How does it, I don't know that. I mean, that was just like Father's love, And I was like, man, he was like, yeah. So he was like, but he said, I feel like that was spoken over you at such an early age. He's like, I never thought about it until you started. He's like, when you taught yourself how to play guitar at 19, I was like, okay, that's weird. People don't just teach yourself how to play guitar. And so, but anyway, yeah. And so that was kind of, that's what kind of topped it off. And so I just remember when I did my first showcase for the record label after I got my record deal, they kind of shut down the office and everybody from the label came out. And my first showcase was for all the Christian radio programmers in the country. And I remember half the label was like, what's this going to be like? And they were, and everybody was like, we don't know. We've never heard him live. Like, but we think it's going to be good. And so my dad's there that day and the whole label couldn't stop watching him because he was just like, he would break down and then like go gather himself, come back out and just break down.
Before we get started today, I would be remiss if I did not thank our partners over at Proper Creative. Proper Creative is a production on demand company and they monetize e-commerce platforms. They have a marketing powerhouse team from graphic designers, web development, photographers, videographers, market analysis, digital marketing strategists, and of course, social media experts. They help companies from development of content and products to the execution of digital strategies for e-commerce. They provide both full service and a la carte services for businesses that sell direct to the consumers. For me today, I am wearing a Proper Creative branded shirt. This is the Level Up Podcast shirt. You can get it. And this is something that we send to all of our guests that come on our show. Our partners send them a gift package, and it's brought to you by Proper Creative. Thank you so much. You can follow them on social media, Instagram primarily, at PROPR Creative. Again, they're an LA-based company, so they do things a little bit cooler than most. They spell proper, PROPR Creative. Follow them on social media, Instagram, and give a shout out. Thank you so much, again, to our brand partners, Proper Creative. Welcome to another week of Level Up. I am Matt Rogers, your host, and as always with me, the gorgeous one, the co-host and engineer. Look at him, Eli Adelman. How are you?
Dude, I'm co-host now.
Co-host?
I was just producer.
I give you a different title every week. It's co-producer, engineer, and then now you're co-host.
How about that?
Well, dude, because the reviews, a lot of times everyone asks, like, we need to hear from Eli more. So I think, teaser alert of our guest today, a little more of Eli, a little less of me.
Oh, man. Look at that.
You know what I'm saying? Are you excited?
Dude, I'm excited.
Backdrop is different. I wanted to move inside of the house today instead of in our mobile studio because we got a big deal here with us. And not just in the stats I'm about to read you, but in stature as well. This man right here, he had 4 Grammy nods, took one home for the best contemporary Christian album. How about this, man? 3 number 1 hits. And you know every single one of them as I do. He's the first CCM artist to begin his career with back-to-back number 1 singles. That doesn't happen. And if that wasn't enough, he was nominated. This is like crazy. Nominated for 19 GMA Dove Awards, and he took home 6 of them. And it's the bomb because he's my neighbor. He lives like 2 blocks away. Zach Williams in the house.
What's up, man? How you doing?
Dude, I'm freaking pumped, obviously.
That was an intro right there, bro. You have to go out on the road.
Yeah, let me be your intro guy.
Hype man.
Dude, the crazy thing is, so it's crazy. This is a lifetime career for most people when you read those stats. But like, dude, you kind of like, we're going to get into your story, but
Sure.
This kind of started in like 5 or 6 years ago, right?
Yeah. 2016, I signed a record deal with Provident, and it's about 5 years, 4.5 years. Yeah.
But here's the crazy thing, and that you viewers need to know. It didn't just start 5 years ago, because a lot of people come in at like the middle of your story and they're like, oh, I want what you have. You're like, dude, you don't know what I've been through.
Well, that's the funny thing. I mean, most people, the new guy comes on and they're like, man, he just came out of nowhere, but they don't know about the 20 years that it took to get there overnight. You know what I mean? So,
100%.
yeah, and it was a good 20 years, I'd say, maybe more than that.
Your story's unbelievable. So just a background of how Zach and I met. A buddy of mine, I moved out here from California 5 years ago, and we're blessed to live where we live, man.
Yeah, man.
I mean, there's just great people, talent everywhere, whether it's TV show hosts or there's musicians everywhere, but like big time speakers and pastors and inspirational coaches, everywhere. And of course, I knew who you were. I got onto you obviously from Chainbreaker. I grew up old school Pentecostal, so I'm like a big Gaither guy.
Yeah, man.
And so when the Gaithers covered it, I'm like, look, dude, you got everyone.
That was pretty cool. Like when you got Bill Gaither doing your music, it's you can quit. I joked with the label, like after that first year, I was like, I'm probably just going to retire this year, like, and go out on top, because I don't know if I can do that again.
Oh, dude,
yeah,
you topped it, and you continue to get
thank
better.
you.
But it's funny because like you sing Chainbreakers like Chainbreaker, and then Bill Gaither sings like Chainbreaker.
Oh yeah. Hey, I've actually snagged a few of those gospel licks that one of the Crab Boys does. I'm like, I put that into the song whenever I do it live. So pretty cool.
And they're right around, they're an hour away or less.
Not far, I know.
They're good friends too. They're good people.
Yeah, they're good people.
I might have Aaron on the show.
You should. Yeah.
I really should, huh?
You should get him and Jason together.
That would be
and
cool.
see who you could. Yeah, that'd be fun.
We could play like a little game with the Crab Brothers, and then just kind of sing it off, or who sang it better. That would actually be funny. But yeah, we met through a mutual friend of mine, Todd, who moved out here as well, and he's like, dude, Zach Williams is like our neighbor up the street, and I'm like, no way. So I fanned out a little bit, but like I didn't want to bug you, because every time like I saw you in a Sprouts or around there, like everyone's just, and I'm like, God, that must drive him crazy. So I don't want to do that.
It's all good, man. I like I said, I feel fortunate to be here. So like, man, never. I'm always like, don't feel afraid to come up and talk, because I'm just a normal dude. Like, like I said, I'm just a kid from a small town that somehow ended up, here, and it's crazy. I pinch myself every day.
You really are, but you're a good guy too. Like, a lot of you don't know this. Zach doesn't know me too well. Like, he knows because we're neighbors and stuff. But like 2 years ago, when we had our first fundraiser for our kid for the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, you gave a very generous donation. You were gonna play, but you were on the road. But I just want you to know personally, that meant so much to my family. And
Thank you.
We don't know, my wife and your wife, Crystal, they're like Facebook friends, but we've never really kicked it yet. We really want to.
We need to.
Yeah, our wives really get along. But like for you to do that, like it just was like people don't do that. Like,
I appreciate it.
I love you, Zach. Okay. So your story is amazing. Take us back to the beginning. Cause like we said, a lot of people enter in the middle of your story or when you're at your height, but they're like, well, he popped in 2017 and he's got, from 2017 to now, your awards have been what most people don't even get in a lifetime. And people would say like, well, he's only been doing it for 4 years, but that's not the truth.
No, it's, I think it started early. I mean, you always, for me, I was always taught like, God's got a plan for your life. I remember growing up as a kid, my parents would pray Jeremiah 29:11 over me. And
which is
it's for I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord, plans to prosper, not to harm you, for hope in the future. And I never, as a kid, you're like, oh, that's sweet, mom and dad, praying for me. It didn't make any sense until honestly just a few years ago, like just how much that just somebody speaking that over your life for that many years and how long it took for that to happen. I know, that there had to been days that my family were like, what did I do wrong, God? Like, what did I do to deserve the way he's living his life? And so I'll kind of take you through that. Like when I grew up in church, my dad led worship. My mom, she sang at church. Honestly, my like earliest memories were like crawling around on floors at church during music practice and like opening up guitar cases and picking on strings. And, but the music thing was never like, I didn't catch the bug. Like I just remember being around it. I never really sang much, but like the thing I wanted to do was play sports. And I was a big basketball fan, and my dad and his brothers.
You're huge when you walk in here. I mean, that hat even makes you look bigger. How big are you?
I'm almost 6'7". So, but I wasn't that big growing up. Like I was just a skinny, lanky.
But
thing.
when you walk in a room too with the boots and with the hat, like dude, you look kind of like
good
Trace
6'8",
Atkins. You're like
6'9",
6'10",
yeah, probably.
Dude.
Who
When you
knows?
come in, it's like whoa.
But so yeah, man, I just like I grew up in this small town, and I was like, I just had this family that just always told me I could be anything I wanted to be. Like I never, even though we didn't have all the money in the world, I never wanted for anything, and I had this support system in my hometown, my family. And, I thought, well, the only way I'm going to get out of this small town when I get older is like to get a basketball scholarship. And my dad and his brothers had been like basketball stars and stuff. And so that was really like, that's what I did. Like from the time I was old enough to play basketball, I started playing. And I ate and slept it like all through middle school and junior high and high school. But around 10th grade, 9th, 10th grade, I got mixed up, with the crowd that's, slipping out after school and drinking beer. And then that, next thing I know, I'm slipping out after school and meeting at the truck stop and, getting high. And I just carried that into, my 12th grade year of high school. And I was being recruited by some Division I schools for basketball. And at semester break of my senior year, there was a big ordeal that went down in high school, and I ended up dropping out of high school. And I got my GED. And
Really?
yeah, there was, we got accused of buying and selling drugs in the locker room at school, which never happened. I mean, I wasn't doing things right, but I was never doing that. I was just a dumb kid, smoking pot, but somehow it turned into a bigger thing.
But it's crazy how even though you didn't do that, you got labeled as that because of the people you were rolling with.
And I feel like I was kind of like, me and a few other kids were kind of, we were just kind of made an example of, and so I dropped out of school. I got my GED. My dad owned a construction company. I went to work for my dad. I worked for a year, and while I was working for him, I was playing in like a men's league, playing basketball, and I met this guy, and he was like, "Hey, man, I went to college in Northwest Arkansas at this junior college. I can probably get you a tryout if you can, leave that stuff alone for a few years and get your nose clean, basically." And I was like, "Yeah, dude." So I go up.
What were you? Were you just smoking pot, or were you doing coke? Were you
No,
doing
I
everything?
was just at that time I was just drinking and smoking pot, just stupid kid stuff, and
Right.
and had I would have probably, at the time it would have probably just ran its course and I'd have grown out of it. But instead, I used that as a crutch after things started happening to me to just try to, ease the pain or fill the hole from the things that I'd done in my life that I didn't accomplish. And so I was playing in this men's league, and the guy's like, "Hey, I can get you a tryout." So I walk on to this junior college in Northwest Arkansas, and I try out, and I make the team, get a full scholarship,
Yeah.
and I move 3 hours away from home.
Now at that point, were you clean, or did you still like do the college party and were you?
I was still partying with my buddies, still doing that, and move up there, and you put a bunch of guys that were the star athlete on their high school basketball team, and you throw a bunch of girls, that you're trying to press into it.
Sure.
And it turns into just an all-star party team every night. And that was pretty much what my first couple of years of college were like. And the day before my freshman season started, I was in a walkthrough practice, and I jumped up to dunk one and just goofing off, and I didn't have my shoes laced up, and I landed on a guy's foot. Tore 5 ligaments in my ankle and redshirted my freshman season. And there was a old guitar in the corner of my apartment that my roommate from Hot Springs, Arkansas, had brought down, and I remember just staring at it and thinking, "I'm going to teach myself how to play that guitar."
Really?
I couldn't go anywhere, and I was like stuck at home.
Was it
with
because like you were bored, or did you have like a passion, like you were drawn to? It was like a moment, or
I didn't know what it was. It was there, and I couldn't go on any of the trips. I was in a cast. I was stuck in this apartment, and I was like, I've got to have some outlet, something to do. And so I went and bought a poster and taped it to my wall and sat on the edge of the bed and started teaching myself how to play chords. And uh, came back home to Arkansas and grabbed my dad's old guitar, took it back to college, and the next year, in my sophomore year, I took a creative writing class.
did it
And
ever cross your mind that you were gonna be a musician, or
You know
did you just do it because you liked it?
it never crossed my mind. Never once did it cross my mind. I thought at the time when I picked the guitar up and kind of caught the bug, I was like, well, this will help me get, the girls, like I want to be a rock star. And unfortunately when I taught myself how to play music and fell in love with writing songs, I fell in love with that lifestyle of like, hey, if I'm going to be a rock star, like I got to live that life. And
Right.
like I was like 110% at anything. So I threw myself into this life and was just like, I lived from the time I was like 20 years old until the time I was 33, just pretty much as reckless as you could live from day in and day out, like not really knowing what the next day was going to be. And that's kind of where, you know, I just kind of got into the end of my rope. I met my wife when I was 29. I met Crystal when I was 29, and I'd been touring in this Southern rock band for about a year. And
But you had already been married before you met Crystal,
I'd been
right?
married. Yeah. I'd been married for about 4 years in my mid 20s. And to be honest, like just drug use and alcohol use was what ruined that. I mean, I couldn't,
Did you
you know,
meet her in that world?
I
And
did. Yeah. I
continue?
mean,
So,
I
okay.
just, met through mutual friends at a party and just kind of didn't want to change. And people get tired of that and want to move on. And so when I met Crystal, I was about a year into playing in my Southern rock band. I had a band called Zach Williams and the Reformation. And we were on the outside to the average person looking in. They thought we were, about to get a record deal and
For sure.
doing all these cool things because we were going to Europe and touring and things like that. But really what was going on is we were working construction jobs all week so we could play 4 days a week and, pay to go play and leave our families and go play rock star. And it wasn't paying the bills, and all it was doing was causing more fights. And by that time my wife we'd had a little boy together. And so kind of fast forward from, roughly around 2009 to 2012, I was just in a dark, dark, dark place. And
Wow. Because it's crazy because it's not that long ago.
no, dude, it really wasn't. So yeah, so we're getting ready to go to Europe for a month, go to Spain and do a tour. And Crystal was pregnant with our daughter Delilah, and I just remember being just like, I mean, I was dark. Like she would say sometimes, everybody thinks you're the happiest person, but you got to be the saddest person I know. And it was just I was just kind of one of those guys that just like took the lid off the bottle and just turned it up strictly to black out and just forget about,
So we're not talking about beer. We're talking what
like
were you,
whiskey,
a whiskey guy?
like just whiskey, just black out on just anything really. Like I was the guy that like party started when Zach got there.
Yeah.
Party didn't stop till Zach left. You hand me something, I'm taking it. I didn't ask what it was. I just knew it might make me feel better.
So let me ask you this, because I mean, there's so many praying parents out there. I know I had, my mom and dad were prayer warriors, and I went through my whole college football thing, and and I did the same thing. Maybe not to that degree, but I did party and stuff. What happens? Why does that happen to kids with good parents? Because I mean, I even read, when I was reading about you, you kind of say that there was nothing really more your parents could have done.
No,
right?
and there wasn't. I think for myself, like I looked back, I couldn't see that until I gave my life to Jesus. I couldn't accept it or own it. I couldn't man up about it. Like I could not, take that and say it was my fault, because I always wanted to put the blame on everybody else. Like I looked back to my high school, not graduating, and tried to put that on my coach for kicking me off the team.
Mhm.
I went to, not graduating college with my graphic design degree to, well, I didn't get along with my teacher because she didn't like me. And I went to my first marriage, and, everything I was always looking to, like, it wasn't my fault. And so I would say when I met the Lord, that was when I kind of was like, well, it's all been my fault. Like, and I
But
couldn't
you
see
knew the
that.
Lord at a young age. So when you say you met the Lord, was there like some
I would,
kind of
I would say,
event?
I would say, growing up as a kid, I had experiences. I had like encounters. I feel like whenever I was a kid in church, little things that would happen, kind of make you feel like you was about to start bawling, and you'd go to the
Yep.
bathroom, kind of collect yourself, and then I wouldn't go back because I didn't like that feeling. I didn't know what that was. I didn't know that I feel like now it was some sort of calling God had on my life, but I didn't like the way it made me feel, and so I didn't go. And but yeah, I think for me, I was on that tour. I was just in this dark place, and I remember my wife saying, basically like, if you can't make some changes when you get home, I'm out. Like, I'm done.
So you're on the verge of maybe
So I'm on
divorce
the,
number
ver-
two.
the verge of a divorce, losing my kids. I was like, and I sure I don't want somebody else raising my kids.
Crystal, your wife, for those of you who don't know, we won't get too much into it right now, but she has an
Oh
amazing
gosh,
redemption
yeah,
story
she's-
too. At this time, was she already on fire for the Lord in her
No,
walk? Or okay,
no, neither one of us were. We just knew that just from like you said, praying parents. Like my parents would, they would come over and sit and pray with me on the couch after a crazy party night, and
wow.
second they'd leave, I'd go out and spark a joint and get high. And she was just always like, why do they do that? Like, she was like, you need your butt kicked, and they're coming over here and loving you. She was like, I don't get it, And so,
Wow.
but I think that's what started to make the turn is she saw that and she was like, what is this? Like, I want that in my life. And so we both knew like we needed Jesus. I knew it from the way I was raised, but I never really like made that commitment to be like, okay, this is it. I'm done with this. And so we're on this tour, and literally like 2 weeks into a month-long tour, and I'd had this like crazy binger night, and I called my wife, and I'm like, can't even hardly talk, and she can't understand me. And I mean, she's already called my parents. It's like, I am done with this dude. Like, I can't take it anymore.
Man.
And literally the next day, I remember being on that bus, and I was just kind of like, okay. I was like, God, I know you're real, and if you are, prove it. Like, and if you do,
Yeah.
I'm done. And literally the next day, we were driving about 8 hours across Spain, and our bus. I'll never forget it. John Mayer had a record came out called "Born and Raised." It had come out that summer. Greg Allman had put out a like an autobiography called "My Cross to Bear." I'm reading this book on my iPad. I'm listening to John Mayer's music. Everybody on our bus is like kind of like passed out sleeping. And I just remember kind of looking around and thinking, man, it's kind of calm. Like, it's never like this on the bus. Everybody's usually cutting up. So I pulled my headphones out, and our bus driver was scanning stations, and it stops on a radio station, and I hear just a snippet of Redeemed by Big Daddy Weave. And I was like, whoa. And I knew it was a Christian song because my dad played, Christian music on his job site. And I knew I'd been around it enough to know. And dude, the song just hit me. And I went back to the hotel, and I listened to this song over and over and over. And I called Crystal. I said, hey, I'm done. And she was like, yeah, right. Like, you're not done.
Right. It's like, I've heard this before.
Yeah. And
right?
I was like, no, I'm done. And I kind of explained to her what was going on. And I was like, but you need to like keep it quiet because I've got 2 weeks left. And if the guys find out, like, it's going to be a long, long time. And so I come home from this tour, and I just remember like coming in, hands and knees crying, sorry for everything I've done, missed, all these things that I've missed them, kids growing up, and can you forgive me kind of moment. And she was just like, yeah. And so I remember putting down music, and I was just kind of like, okay, we're going to find a church in our hometown. Let's start going to church.
Of Arkansas.
Yeah. And we lived
And
in
this is
Jonesboro.
not long ago, right?
No,
Like
this was in
2013?
2012.
2012, okay.
And so on June 10th of 2012.
8.5 years ago.
Yeah. So 8.5 years ago. And I remember we lived in Jonesboro, Arkansas, and there was this big Southern Baptist church. And I grew up like you. I grew up borderline Pentecostal, kind of Assembly of God or non-denominational, whatever you want to call it.
You grew up in Assemblies of God?
Oh, yeah. And
Me
so
too.
I
Which,
was,
by the way, not like the snake drink
No,
poison,
none of
dude,
that.
but like the evangelist, like praise God.
oh, yeah. Like, it was Holy Ghost fire stuff,
Yeah.
But I just remember, I remember like, I forgot, the Holy Ghost fire just got me.
When you
Oh,
got
yeah.
home, your hands and knees.
Yeah. So I just remember we found this church in our hometown, and big Southern Baptist church, and I was like, I'm not gonna like this. Like, Music's not going to be good. I was just like
Right.
I was in my head. I was like, they're not, and at the time I had hair down to about the middle of my chest. I was wearing bell bottoms and, kind of looked like somebody out of Leonard Skinner. And I was like, they're not going to want me there.
You trimmed your beard, by the way, since the last time I saw you.
Sorry.
It's a little bit shorter.
I know. His is looking
like
good.
my man Eli's. So, all right.
But, so I was like, this is not going to be the place. And everybody that didn't go there called it Six Flags Over Jesus. It was just this big church,
right.
And I'll never forget, like we walked into this church and I remember just feeling like, this is exactly where we need to be. And everybody was so nice to us and just really accepted us. And it was a few months down the road, I'd put music down and I was like, I'm just going to concentrate on like this relationship with my family, with my kids, with God, kind of get that right. And
So at this point too, you're just a normal guy. No one really knows who you are.
Nobody
right?
knows me other than the front man for this Southern rock band in our hometown.
Right.
This wild dude that gets kicked out of bars and's done all this stupid stuff. Like
And
that's
you
who
never
they
felt
knew me.
judged when you walked in there? Or anyone
I thought I was going to, but I didn't, and that's the thing. That's what
That's great.
really changed it. I was like, this is going to be awful, and never felt that way. Like it actually felt like what the church was supposed to feel like.
And the cool thing too, and I want to say this because I know we have a lot of female listeners out there and a lot of parents that listen, is that the prayer of the fervent prayer availeth much. And I know that there's a lot of parents out there that are praying and you're not seeing a breakthrough in your kids. And that's where I believe, and Zach's stories, testament to it, and mine is that there's supernatural things going on behind the scenes through your prayers that are working and that are closer than you think. And then also, like, a lot of parents feel guilty because their kids are going down a path that they didn't think. And it's like, look, man, I just don't want the parents to feel so weighted down, because a lot of, like, look at if parenting was a reflection of the only reflection, like, then God screwed up a lot because he's got a lot of bad kids.
Well, I
right?
think the thing is like, I think the one thing with parenting, I know the one thing that made the difference with my parents is all you really can do is plant that seed and you water that seed and you kind of cultivate that seed. And then after that plant's going to grow and do what it wants to do. Like, but it has that root, you know what I mean? And that's what I had. I had a root. And so I was rooted in that. And so, yeah, man. So we're going to this church. I've kind of put music down and we're taking every class that we can on Wednesday night. We're going Sundays and Sunday nights and all this stuff. And then I remember the worship pastor at the church, they kind of knew my story and they just kind of been watching my family and watching us grow. And he was like, man, we're doing this thing on Sunday and we would like to have you sing this song. Would you be interested in singing it? And I was
because
like,
they knew you were a Southern rock singer.
yeah. And they knew who I was, and I was like, yeah, man, I said, I'd be interested. And so they sent me this song and it's called it's called Life Song. It was by Casting Crowns. And I show up to this like practice, kind of just like not knowing what it is, just learning the lyrics to the song. And it's like all these people from Celebrate Recovery with all these like cardboard testimony thing. And I'm like, oh Lord, what have I gotten myself into? And I'm trying to read these signs as people are walking up and I'm like freaking bawling, crying, trying to get through a song. I'm like, I can't do this, I ended up making it through it. It was just this amazing moment. And then a few months later, they start inviting me to like be on the worship team and like sing a song here and there.
Did you like it? Did you want to do that? Or were you kind of like, oh, I'll help the church out?
I really did. I liked it. And the more I did it, the more I liked it. And so it was about a year into us going to church there. And the pastor from the church, he was kind of like, he said, man, we've been wanting to launch a campus for like years and we've just not had the guy to do it. And we really want to reach out to people that, have your stories, people that, have gone through the path that you've gone through, or maybe there's people that got offended or never found their place at church. Like, and we think you're the guy to lead it. And we honestly like aren't going to tell you how to do it. Like, we're going to let you pick and choose the music. And what we want to do is just have live worship and a simulcast, screen pop down.
Rad.
Would you be interested? And I was kind of like, wow. And so I worked for him for a year part-time. We launched this campus. It was called The Refuge and it grew pretty.
This is what, 2013, 2014?
Yeah, I was in about 2013. They launched the campus and I worked there for a year part-time. And then in 2014, I went on full-time and we had two campuses at that time that I was leading. I was leading a college service. I was kind of campus director.
You were probably busier back then than
I
you
really
are now.
was, I was doing all the connections ministry and calling all the people and checking in on them and hospital visits. And I mean, it was crazy. Like, but I loved it. I was like, man, I'm like, this is what I've dreamed of doing. Like,
So you weren't the worship leader, you were the pastor.
I would say they called me a connections pastor, but I was really like a worship leader. I didn't
Do you
have
like
any.
to speak? Do you like to preach?
I'm not. That's not my thing. Like
Okay.
I feel like my sermons are in about 3.5 minutes in a song. That's
Right.
about it. You know, which I think you can pack that in there and reach people with music. That's
ain't
a
teasing.
powerful thing.
I can't watch Fear is a Liar, the video, without crying.
Oh,
It's impossible.
That
In
was
fact,
a-
that's my challenge to the viewers. YouTube, Fear is a Liar, Zach Williams, ZACH, and try not to cry.
yeah.
Go
Well,
ahead.
it's still tough for me, even singing. Singing these songs. Sometimes you find that person in the crowd that needs to hear it, and you're just kind of like stuck on them, and you're kind of like trying to make it through the song. But I would say when I started leading worship for that campus, I had this moment where I was leading worship one Sunday, and I just remember coming home and telling Crystal, I was like, I really think like this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I said, this has really been the first time I've ever been on stage and felt comfortable in my own skin and not feeling like I'm having to put on a show or get somebody's attention. Like it's not about me. It's about this vertical moment that we're having. And, really it's for this audience of one. And she was kind of like, yeah, I think this is what you're supposed to be doing too. And so I was still kind of on the fence about maybe, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And I'm working at the church and doing all this stuff. And Crystal signs us up to go to a prison. She actually signs herself up to go to a prison and share her testimony with some women. And she comes home and she is just like on fire. And I'm like, hold on, slow down. This is not for me. Like, this is your thing. She's like, no, you got to go. You've got to go. You got to take your guitar, take some of those songs you've been writing in the bathroom and sing them, yada, yada, yada.
So
and
you're writing your songs at this point too, huh?
At that time, I had started writing some new music.
Are you performing them in church too or no?
And we were doing some of them with my worship band. And I had this song called Wash Clean. And it was one of the first songs I wrote whenever I got saved. And ironically enough, I wrote it on the side of a bathtub, but that's funny, but
what is it? Because in like your bio, like you would go into the bathroom and you would write songs on the edge of your bathtub.
Of my tub.
Why?
We had this like jacuzzi tub and it had a good little seat on the edge of it. And it was away from everybody and I could shut our bedroom and shut the bathroom, put some towels down and I could get loud and not bother anybody else. And it was kind of my little studio and the acoustics were pretty good. So
Zach, you've been in the bathroom for an hour and a half. What are you doing in there? You're like, I'm
Exactly.
actually writing songs to Jesus.
So I was writing these songs and she was like, she knew what I was doing. And so she said, take some of your songs. And so I didn't want to go. Well, she signed me up to go anyway. And so
A good wife will do that.
So I went. And, it was kind of in that moment where I was kind of like, a lot of times I didn't want to go because I didn't feel prepared to go. I didn't feel like I knew what to say. And I've learned over the years, like, God just wants to hear you say yes. He doesn't, you don't have to be ready. He gives you that. Yeah. He gives you what you need for those moments. And that's really what happened that day. I remember we shared our story with these women and we had this kind of invitation time and I was playing this song, Wash Clean, head down, just kind of jamming it out. And I look up and there's like 35 women giving their lives to Jesus. And I was floored and I was like, goodness.
And Crystal was there, right?
Crystal was there.
Was she like,
yeah, we were all just kind of like, everybody that went on the trip, like from the church, was just kind of floored. And I was like, and I feel like in that moment, I really like, and people talk about that audible voice. Like, I really feel like I heard God say, Zach, if you need an aha moment, here it is. These are the people, places, the songs. This is what I have for you. Like, this is what I want you to be doing. And so it was about a year later, I was leading worship for a Christmas Eve service, and a guy who's ended up now producing my last several records that I put out. He was actually from the same hometown.
No way.
About 10 years younger than me. He was living in Nashville. He had gone to Belmont. He'd been living here for about 10 years. Well, him and his wife decided they're going to come in and see family. Well, his wife's dad was a deacon at the church. Mm-hmm. And so they're literally on their way to one of our other campuses, and one of their, like, his sister-in-law is like, I want to go to the big service. Like, that's where we need to be for Christmas. So they turn around in the middle of the road on the way to this other place and drive to the campus I'm leading worship at. And I'm never leading worship in the main service, but our worship pastor was out of town for a wedding. And so I'm singing a song, and I remember Jonathan, he was like,
wait a minute, this is funny to me. Zach Williams is at a church at the satellite campus, but never leads worship in the main campus because there's a worship leader that's better than Zach Williams. Is that even?
Hey,
really?
I love you, Jeff.
All All right, so you take Jeff's place.
So I'm leading a song that
That's
night.
a God moment for sure.
And the next morning I get up and like all of my emails have been hacked by this Jonathan Smith dude who wants to take me out for coffee and hear my story. He's a record producer, songwriter, and I'm like, oh my gosh.
No one had ever done that with you at that point?
And I'm like, I've heard this. Well, in our old band, there were always people like trying to get us showcases. Yeah. And I'm just kind of like, I've heard this. I'm kind of over all that. I'm totally happy with what I'm doing. And so we have coffee, and I actually gave him this little EP that I'd recorded that had some songs that I'd written, and he took it back and literally called me within like a week and was like, dude, you need to come to Nashville and you need to start writing some music.
Who had Jonathan Smith been with before you? Anyone that we would know?
I mean, he's written songs for he was writing songs with Jason Ingram and worked on Chris Tomlin records and just things like that as like studio hands and, really trying to get his foot in the door. I mean, he'd had a couple number one songs, I think, as a co-writer on, but
his thing is a producer.
He's a producer and a songwriter. And
Talk about timing, man, dude, for both of you guys.
So he invites me over, and about the time he invites me over, I find out I've got a blown disc in my neck, and I'm going to have neck surgery.
Oh, no.
And I just...
From basketball back in the day?
It was, honestly, from finishing sheetrock. I worked for my dad's construction company for close to 15 years. And so here I am. I'm going to have to figure out a way now, this new job at the church that I'm working, to take off. I'm going to miss this opportunity to go right in Nashville. Well, church was so good to me. They were like, take off 8 weeks. We'll pay you. Stay home. You can plan everything. We'll get somebody to lead it for you. They totally took care of me. Jonathan calls me and he's like, hey, my wife's pregnant. It's going to be about, 6 or 8 months before she delivers. Mm-hmm. Why don't we regroup it into the summer and you come over? And so in the summer, around June of 2015, I'll start driving back and forth to Nashville. And I think
which is what, like 6 hour drive?
4 hours.
Okay.
So the third trip that I came over, I had like an entire week plan of writing. And it was on the Friday, on the last day of the week. I met this girl named Mia Fields.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Come on, baby.
So I meet Mia. Jonathan and me have been working all week, and he's just like, dude, you're going to love her. She's just such a force, and, she's great to work with. And, she's kind of, doing me a favor in writing with us today because nobody knew who I was. And so basically, like, we're sitting in a room, and honestly, I'm doing the same thing right now. We probably spent 2 hours talking about our stories, and she had a sister who was struggling with some stuff, and I was telling her stuff I'd gone through, and I was really, at the time, really big into my prison ministry, and we were talking about it, and she just blurts out, you should write a song called Chainbreaker. And I was like, I can't write a song called Chainbreaker. I was like, Break Every Chain was just on the radio. It was a big worship song. She was like, you can do whatever you want. And she was like, as big as you are,
right?
Goes, people are going to believe you. And so,
yeah, right when you walked in, I've never made a charcuterie board with treats for anybody, but when you walked in, I'm like, we got to make him something nice. You can get whatever you want, Zach. Go ahead.
That's funny. So we literally spent like 2 hours talking. She blurts that title out, and it wasn't like 10 minutes later, Jonathan like spun around to the piano, and he played that opening like part to the song, and I just said, if you've been walking the same old road for miles and miles, and he was like, wait a minute, what'd you say? He was like, he's like, write that down. And so, we started that song, and it wrote itself in like 15 minutes. And like, I remember like driving back to Arkansas that night with just like, wow, like, God, will you just like take this song all over the world? Kind of like, I don't know, this feels special. Like, can you just do something with this? And that kind of was my prayer every time I drive back and forth to Nashville. And I started driving back and forth, and before I know it, I've pretty much written an entire record, and I'm not even signed to a label yet. And so it was about 6 months later, A&R at the record label came over. He wanted to visit. He comes to the church service.
So Chainbreaker's on the shelf for 6 months?
Yeah.
That's
so it's
Did other people have the opportunity to grab it?
Jason Crabb heard it and wanted to record it. And my label was like, no, we're going to hold on to that.
Well, that's a good move then.
And so,
oh man,
but he didn't hear about it until I'd already gotten a record deal. Like, nobody had heard about it for 6 months. So the A&R from Sony comes over, from Sony Provident.
Hey, let me ask you a question real quick. So after you write that, do you guys kind of like oh my gosh, this is it. You
Oh,
kind of you hold it like
Yeah,
kind of like Lady Antebellum with Need You Now. Like we're gonna
I
hold
think
this.
they knew how special the song was way more than I knew because I wasn't in that world yet. Like I wasn't in that like what works for radio. Honestly, I drove back thinking, well, this is way too country and doesn't sound like anything on Christian radio. They're never gonna play this. And
Right.
I'm a nobody. Like nobody knows who I am. So that was kind of my prayer. Like, God, would you just like open the gates? Like let me get this song to everybody. Well, in November of 2015, my A&R rep comes over. He says he just wants to come to a worship service, go out to lunch, and
So for people who don't know, what's an A&R rep?
artist representative. He's basically like my liaison between the big wigs at the label, and
Okay.
kind of goes to bat for me if there's anything I need or
So he's pitching you to labels.
yeah. And a lot of times he's kind of the in between when you're working on a record. He's setting up all that stuff for studio stuff. He's giving you advice on what he thinks the song could be or this, and helping with mixes and all that. So
cool.
But so anyway, we're it's November, and he comes over. We go to lunch, and we're sitting in a parking lot after church. My family had gone home, and I'm talking to him, and he's like, "Man, I really think, like we need to get you in a band to like do a showcase for the record label. I think there's something here." And I'm like, "Okay." And so I was just kind of like, "That's great. Like, let's do that." He was like, "First of the year, let's get a band together and do a showcase." I was like, "Man, okay, cool." And so we going about our business, and 3 days later, I'm getting ready to I'm working with my band for like a Wednesday night college service.
Your worship band?
Yeah, at church. And
Yeah.
this is literally 3 days after, Blaine, my A&R rep, had gone back to the label. I get a phone call at like 4 in the afternoon right before I'm going to practice. And he's like, "Hey," he goes, "Hey, he goes, Jonathan played your demo today." He said, "We played your demo today for the entire record label for like the CEO." And he was like, "And
What record label?
it was for Sony Provident here in Nashville."
Yeah.
He goes, "Man, this is crazy because this has never happened to me." He goes, "But they want to offer you a record deal off of that demo." And I was like,
Let's go.
I was kind of like, "What?" I was like, "Are you serious?" And he was like, "Dude, I'm just here." He goes, "I'm telling you, like, this doesn't happen." And I'm
So
like,
what normally happens?
Normally,
why is
like-
that such a big deal?
well, normally you come, you prove yourself with the band. They want to know before they're signing anybody like that they can do it, And so he was just like, "This is crazy. Like, you don't even have a band and you're getting a record deal. And, I don't even know what other songs you got." He goes, "They just heard that one." And he was like, the head of the label was like, "That's a career song. Like that is a launching somebody's career and like playing for the
And
rest
it's not
of
like we're talking like Blue Couch Records. It's like
Yeah.
real freaking Sony
and
here.
I was like, "Man," so I was just kind of like, "Are you serious?" And so here I am. I'm 38 years old. And I'm like, I'm signing a record deal. And I'm like, what in the world is going on? And so that was just that was really how it all started. Like, and that's kind of, a year later we moved to Nashville, and, and then you kind of get in your head and think, well, can I do something better? And, you have those days where it's like, I don't know if I can ever write another song again. And
So when does Chainbreaker blow up?
so Chainbreaker come out in the summer of
Your song, right?
Yeah, it came out in June of 2016. So another almost 7 or 8 months after I signed after I started talking to a label, it came out. I remember the day I signed my record deal. Terry, the head of our label, he kind of slapped me on the back. He said, "Have you recorded that song yet?" And I was like, "Nope." And he was like, "You better go record it. We're sending it to radio in a month." And I was like, "What?"
So at this point, is it on you to record and put everything together, or do you have people that do that?
So the label, they
Okay.
at that point, like they set it all up, and so we went down to Blackbird here in Nashville and recorded Chainbreaker, and I was like a kid in a candy store, and I mean,
for those of you who don't know Blackbird Studios, it's kind of like
I mean,
it's the creme de la creme of
it's
recording
everybody's
studios.
been there, but and that was it. Like that's how it started, and that's the journey. I would say from 1998 until 2012. I played music from 98 till 2012.
So it only took you almost 2 decades.
So almost
People
20
were like, "Oh, it happened in 5 years." No,
So
that's not the
20
truth.
years of grinding it out, 20 years of feeling like there was something there. And I think the thing that made it all for me, probably the coolest story out of this whole thing, and I don't think I've shared it with too many people. I don't share it a lot of times because I can't share it without crying. But so when I started playing Southern rock music, my dad, I worked with my dad. I worked for a construction company. We worked together for almost 15 years. And so after I gave my life to the Lord, I remember we were sitting on a job site one day. This was when I was part-time working at the church. And we're literally sitting on a box of sheetrock mud, sharing a can of, Viennese sausages, and
Yeah.
we're just talking, kind of having this heart to heart. And he's just kind of telling me about all this, all the years that he prayed for me and the years that he just was like, what did I do wrong, God? Like I did everything you asked. And, why is this the path that he's on, kind of thing. And he was like, I knew that there was something special when I first started hearing you write songs and play music. He goes, but you were, living in dive bars and getting, stoned out of your mind and drunk every night. And he was like, I knew that wasn't it. He was like, and I didn't want to tell you anything that was going to make you like feel like you had to live up to something. So he was like, I've never told you this. He said, but he's like, when you signed your record deal and you released Chainbreaker, he was like, it came back to me. He said, so my parents moved to Pensacola, Florida in 1977, and I was born in 78, and they had me dedicated at birth at this church that they were going to. And he said when they took me down to the altar to have me dedicated, I was just like throwing a big fit and screaming and crying. And the pastor, made the comment to my family of just how strong my lungs were because I was carrying on. And told my dad that he said, this child will be a voice for his generation. And my dad was like, I couldn't tell you that for 33 years because I never wanted to put pressure on you. He goes, but I knew when you started singing Christian music and I saw the effect that those songs were having on people, that was kind of like this thing. And I was like, wow. So I was kind of like, how do you do that? How does it, I don't know that. I mean, that was just like Father's love, and I was like, man, he was like, yeah. So he was like, but he said, I feel like that was spoken over you at such an early age. He's like, I never thought about it until you started. He's like, when you taught yourself how to play guitar at 19, I was like, okay, that's weird. People don't just teach yourself how to play guitar. And so, but anyway, yeah. And so that was kind of, that's what kind of topped it off. And so I just remember when I did my first showcase for the record label after I got my record deal, they kind of shut down the office and everybody from the label came out. And my first showcase was for all the Christian radio programmers in the country. And I remember half the label was like, what's this going to be like? And they were, and everybody was like, we don't know. We've never heard him live. Like, but we think it's going to be good. And so my dad's there that day and like,
Pops was there with you?
Yeah. He comes and like the whole label couldn't stop watching him because he was just like, he would break down and then like go gather himself, come back out and just break down. And
What's
they're
your
like,
dad's
we're watching
name?
your Steve.
Steve,
Yeah.
I need to be a better dad. Dude, I need to be a better dad.
I know. But anyway, I mean, that's
man.
that's the long story of how I got here. And, and I feel like, I just feel like, I've learned to write through my experiences, through my scars. And I also kind of have learned who my audience is and who the people I'm writing songs for. And so I feel like if I can, each record kind of write through that season or write through where I've been in my life or something that's relatable to somebody else, I feel like that's what I want to be doing. And I feel like, Christian radio has really, really accepted my style and the things I've done. And hopefully it's opened some lanes up for some new artists. So
It's just so refreshing to hear that story because, like I said before, there's so many parents that are praying for kids that, are going down the wrong road. And when you hear about your dad, Steve, like so much like God, to lead you like a shepherd, soft, and just love you back in instead of condemn you and put that on you, even though he knew the anointing that was on your life, the calling, but never put it on you until God opened the door to walk, to have you walk through it. And you had, just listening to you talk, man, it's cool because you had the anointing your entire life, kind of like King David, anointed a king so young, but went through some stuff until he stepped into that. But, your dad to just trust in God and not put the pressure on you and let God do what God does. And look at you now, man. I mean, so that day that your dad was crying and you're performing for all the Christian radio, how did it? I mean, obviously it turned out great, but how was that day?
It turned out great, and I remember just being terrified of what could happen. You know, a new artist. You know, in my almost 40 years old, thinking basically like I'm starting over, like I'm starting from ground zero, and like if something's going to happen with this, it's going to need to happen quick because I've got to provide for my family, and like I'm stepping out of a full-time position with benefits into this unknown world of like this could flop and I could fall, on my face, and
Right.
where am I at then?
How
It turned out
How
great.
was the church when you left? Because some churches are
They were great.
upset
I mean,
and
they
were
let me
good.
do a benefit concert and help me out, and
So it was let's support Zach.
it was
on his
honestly
calling.
like let's help him out. Like he's going into something new. Let's raise some money and help him out for the next year. So it was really cool.
Which is
But-
super smart because you have to send your tithe somewhere, right?
But I'll never forget that day. There was a lady. Her name's Carmen Brown. She's at a studio out of Florida, Joy FM, and she stood up at the end of Chainbreaker, and the whole that whole radio event, that programmer's event, like the theme was how to break a new artist into the radio.
Wow.
And she stood up. She was like, I'm going to break him in Christian music. And she spun that song the very next morning in Florida. And
you kidding
that's
me?
kind of what kicked it off. Like people heard that and other stations started spinning the song and just kind of, so I'm out.
So when you're doing, okay, so educate me and the listeners. So when you're doing that performance, that show, it's for Christian radio.
It was strictly for the
outlets.
people that program those stations
And so it's for those program directors.
to come hear
They
new
either-
music from new artists that labels have signed, basically.
So, which happens a ton, and a ton of times they're like, "Oh, that was all great, whatever," but they don't spin it, they don't play
Yeah.
it. And for you, that lady
Yeah.
stood up and said, "I'm gonna break this guy."
Yeah, it was kind of one of those things like, and I've like the head of our radio team has said it a million times. He's like, you usually go to these things and they've heard it all, and nobody gets excited about anything because it's just it's kind of the norm. Everybody hears it all the time. And I remember I was playing. I played 3 songs. I played a song called "Chainbreaker," "Revival," and "To the Table." When I was playing "To the Table," Jeff, my radio guy, was like, I just remember seeing like everybody who was on their laptops close their laptop and just start like watching. He was like, and he was like, I knew then like, all right, this is gonna be good. Like this is gonna work. And so I went out on a tour a few months later with myself, a couple other bands. I was by myself with an acoustic guitar every night, just walking on stage singing "Chainbreaker" and "To the Table." And Chainbreaker went #1 in October that year, and
So awesome.
yeah, hung out there for about 16 weeks. And so it was kind of like,
Yeah, baby.
then I was kind of like, okay, now how do I top that? And then I jokingly told my label, I'm like, I'm retiring like
right.
at the end of this year just so I can not have to.
But you
deal
did
with
top it
this.
because you are the first artist to ever be a new artist and have back-to-back #1
Pretty crazy.
debuting singles. Which was what was the next one?
Old Church Choir.
Old
Yeah.
Church Choir.
Yeah.
Which is such a cool video, man. Okay, so that's one of the questions I want to ask you. When you're putting together these videos, so you write the song, when you put together the videos, do producers stuff come up with a concept and say, hey, Zach, this is what we want to do? Or do you have input like, no, I want
have
an
a
old
lot.
church and I want to do this?
I have a lot of input. So I went to college for a graphic design degree, and I've just kind of got the artsy thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've worked really close with like all the guys that have produced the videos of like really kind of like getting what I want to see in that video to happen, and I feel like we've accomplished it on, pretty much everything we've done so far. So the videos they're kind of like it can be fun, and it can also be just like it's kind of painful kind of getting it to where you want it to finally be, because there's so many like edits and things that you need to do to get it there, or you feel like spots you missed it could have done better, but for the most part they've all worked out really well.
The thing that trips me out, I mean, if I'm being honest, is my favorite song is Fear is a Liar of yours.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously Chainbreaker, that's like your Star Spangled Banner, obviously, right? Like
Yeah.
that's your signature. But the thing that trips me out is Fear is a Liar. That one's only got the #3
I
to
know.
where the other, like, does that trip you out? Because again, you can't watch that video
I'll
and
tell you-
not
I'll
freaking
tell
ball
you-
your eyes
I'll
out.
tell you who messed that up.
What?
Corey Asbury.
Why?
Reckless Love.
Oh.
That thing hung out at #1 forever. I was like, dude, you blocked me, man.
Are
But,
you friends? Are you guys all in the same
We
place? Are you
know.
cool?
I know them all. Yeah, dude. That was a great song. I actually wrote a song last night with one of the writers for Reckless Love, and I joke with him all the time. I'm like, you guys kept me from getting to number one, But the thing is, man, I don't think it's about the number ones. When you see
No.
a song that you had an idea for, and you had something that you wanted God to do and use that song. When you see God do that, when you hear the stories of what those songs are doing to people and how they're helping, I don't think it matters if it's a number 50 or a number one. If it reaches somebody, Redeemed was one of those songs that reached me, and there's a time and a place for those songs on the radio that somebody needs to hear it.
That's what I think I love, honestly, most. I'm not trying to patronize you just because you're sitting here in front of me, but one of the things I love most about your style of music is, yes, it's Christian, but it casts such a wide net. It has such a vibe that, quite honestly, these other Christian artists don't have. They're Christian artists, and that's going to be playing, but I'll never forget, I was taking my father-in-law, who at the time was not a believer, back to the airport, and I had Fear Is a Liar on there, and he was listening to it and he liked it, and he goes, hey, is this like a Southern rock country song? I'm like, no, dude, this is a Christian song.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, I thought it might be a Christian song. So I like that because you cast such a wide net to where you can play that in a non-Christian crowd, in a very mainstream crowd. And that's a blessing to so many.
And I think that's kind of what I've tried to do. I just feel like I want to write songs that are relatable. That song, when I wrote Fear Is a Liar, I wrote that honestly for myself. Like, I'll never forget, I was standing at the Chick-fil-A down here off Mac Hatcher, like with my A&R guy, and we're getting lunch, and he hands me a piece of paper that says Fear Is a Liar. He's like, dude, I've been taking my son to baseball practice, and this is like painted in the parking garage. And he was like, I think it'd be a cool song. And I was like, you have no idea, like, because I was literally walking on stage every night with that guitar, singing 2 songs, scared to death that here I am, 40-year-old dude, toured with the band forever. I'm by myself. I'm living on the road, away from my family. And I'm like, I've got the devil in my ear going, you don't belong here. You don't deserve this. Like, don't you remember your past or what? And I was just kind of like, I needed that anthem for myself to like sing over my own life every night, because I was struggling with those things. And, and that was just one of those things that, like, in turn ended up being something for somebody else, which is
so cool how those things
This is
get
cool how music works.
Do you feel different now in this one? We'll wrap up, and you're gonna, we're gonna be honored. You're gonna play an awesome song for us right now. One of my favorite. I think the video is so cool. Less Like Me. The video is awesome, by the way.
Thank you.
It's just so cool. I remember, whatever, it doesn't matter. But when my wife showed me like a month ago, and she's like, Zach's new video's out. Check it out.
I got to tell you that
that's freaking cool.
That video jacked my shoulder up. Like, driving that bus, like I really drove that bus.
Right?
Like, when I showed up that morning, it was on a trailer.
Mm-hmm.
And they had already told me, like, you're not going to have to drive the bus. We're going to shoot it so that we're just pulling it on a trailer. And I literally hadn't been there 30 minutes. It's 5:30 in the morning. The producer's like, you think you could drive that bus? And I'm like, sure I can. And the old guy that brought it down, he's like, it's double clutch. You think you can? And I'm like, tell me how to do it. I was like, I could probably figure it out. And believe it or not, I started driving that thing. I drove that from 6 in the morning until 5:30 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
No power steering.
Oh, geez.
And, neck surgery a few years back. And I'm cranking on that thing. And like the next morning I get up and I told my wife, I was like, I think I tore something in my shoulder.
Did you?
Well, I've had a cortisone shot now, and I'm actually fixing to go get an MRI for it. But
oh, man.
yeah, I'm like, that thing, it was worth it though. No pain, no gain.
Yeah. No, don't worry. This is, we bring heaven in this place, so we'll lay hands on you before you leave. It'll be better. All right, I got to ask this. Do you have a favorite song, or is it like, oh, they're all my babies, you can't love one more than the other? Or do you have,
gosh.
I mean, I would think it would be Chainbreaker because that launched you, but is it something else that where you got your baby?
They change, I think, for me, like, for some of the things. I really like To the Table is probably still one of my favorite songs to play.
Really?
Like it's kind of an invitation song. Like, I mean, it is an invitation. And I remember writing that song after I read Ragamuffin Gospel. It was about Rich Mullins, and Brendan Manning wrote it. And I remember, like, just the struggle that Rich Mullins had, like, just this, like, battle that he had, never feeling worthy or never feeling good enough. And I've struggled with that, and I struggle with it still today, being a Christian artist. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why I wrote Less Like Me, is just because I feel like people put you on this pedestal and think that, well, because he does this, his life's got to be perfect.
Sure.
And I feel like I'm needing Jesus every day. I'm needing to go down to that altar and get saved every day. But
Right.
that's not the case. Like, it's a one and done. Like, we didn't deserve anything he did for us, and there's nothing that can be done to take it away once we've asked him into our hearts. And so that was kind of what that song was. It was like this idea of like, you can bring everything in your life that's ever been done wrong or that you've done wrong to this table that's been prepared. There's a chair with your name on it, and it's just waiting for you to come take your seat. And like, that was it. And so I think I love that song because of what it stands for, but I also loved it just because you see the people in the crowd when you're playing these songs that need to hear that. And when it clicks of like, oh crap, is it that easy? Can I just really just go ask Jesus to forgive me? And he does. And it's like, yeah, that's exactly how it works. Like, it's not a fancy prayer. It's not any of that. It's a heart, so.
His yoke is easy and his burden is light, baby. And another powerful video that you have is when you're singing in the prison. That
was fun. That was awesome.
So powerful, man.
That was a special day.
Last question before we get to your performance. Do you only sing what you write, or do people pitch you their songs? Kind of like, Crab was going to try to take Chainbreaker. Does that still happen, or do you only really like to sing yours?
I only really like to sing mine because I feel like if I'm a part of, if I've written that, like, I think people believe that more if it's something that I've gone through. Like, I feel like I can, connect with the listener more because they're going to be like, oh man, like, I can tell by the way he just said that, like, that dude's been there.
Yeah.
And I'm not to say that I wouldn't down the road, but like,
right. No, that's right now,
right now, that's where I'm at. Like, I want to be a writer on everything that I'm putting out.
All right. Well, speaking of that, will you play a song for us right now?
I will.
And what will you be playing?
Less Like Me.
Let's do this.
Hey, thanks for having me on Level Up with Matt Rogers. My name is Zach Williams, and this song is called Less Like Me. Oh, I have days to lose the fight, try my best, but just don't get it right. Where I talk a talk that I don't walk, miss the moments right before my eyes. Somebody with a hurt that I could have helped, somebody with a hand I could have held. I just can't see past myself, Lord, help me be a little more like mercy, a little more like grace. A little more like kindness, goodness, love and faith. A little more like patience, a little more like peace. A little more like Jesus, a little less like me. Yeah, there's no denying I have changed. I've been saved from who I used to be. But even at my best, I must confess, I still need help to see the way you see. Somebody with a hurt that I could have helped, somebody with a hand could have held. I just can't see past myself, Lord, help me be a little more like mercy, a little more like grace, a little more like kindness, goodness, love and faith, a little more like patience, a little more like peace, a little more like Jesus, a little less like me. Oh, I want to be the beggar on the street, learn to be on hands and feet, freely give what I receive, Lord, help me be. I want to put you first above all else, love my neighbor as myself, in the moments no one sees, Lord, help me be. 1, 2, 3, a little more like mercy, a little more like grace, a little more like kindness and goodness and love and faith, a little more like patience, a little more like peace, a little more